David Smith here with one more flipped classroom math video lesson. 3 tips before we start. First, remember that you can adjust the playback speed as you desire. Second, you can pause the video at any point to jot down notes or write down questions. Third, you can turn on the captions so you can read my words on the screen. Today's topic, finding line equations. And you know from our last lesson, we worked on that. We worked on the 3 forms, slope-intercept, general form, and point slope. Today we're going to do 2 more techniques. We're going to rearrange the point slope form of the equation of a line, and we're going to use that to find the other 2 forms real quickly. And then we're also going to do some work directly off of graphs, which is another way that you're going to be asked to find equations of lines. So let's get started. So here's our point slope form. Y minus b, which is the y-coordinate of some point that we already know, equals the slope, which we already know, times x minus a, which is the x-coordinate of some point we already know. And so this equation lets us come up with a line, or this format lets us come up with a line equation when we know the slope and one point that's on that line. So what we're going to do now is we're going to rearrange this equation into another form that's nice and easy to do your plug-in step. So watch this. I'm going to divide both sides by x minus a, okay? So I'm just going to do this in big steps, x minus a here and x minus a there. That's going to cancel out the x minus a on that side, and what we're going to end up with, I'm going to switch sides, we're going to end up with slope, that's all that's left on this side, equals y minus b over x minus a. So this form is pretty easy to use. I think in some ways it's easier than this one to do your plug-in step when you have a point and a slope. So let's do a couple problems with that. Okay, let's do an example. Here's our format. This is our point slope equation just rearranged, solve for slope. And I'm going to give you a line here. We have a line that has 3/4 is the slope, 3/4. And there's a point on that line, which is the point 1, -2. So let's work this through and see what we get. I'm going to do my first steps of plug-in. M, my slope, 3/4. So that's 3/4 equals, and then I've got my points here, so I've got my x and my y coordinate. So I'm going to write y minus the y coordinate, which is -2, over x minus the x coordinate, which is 1. So that's my plug-in step. Now, let's just simplify the top just a little bit. So I'm going to write this, actually let's just do a whole nother step. I'm going to do it sideways. So 3/4 is now going to equal y plus 2 over x minus 1. Okay? So I just double negative that, made it back into the positive that it really is. So as you've probably heard me say before, the simplest way to deal with 2 fractions in an equation is to cross multiply. You could go through all the steps to find a common denominator, but that's just more steps. So the easiest thing to do here is to multiply the top on one side times the bottom on the other. So that's going to be 3 times x minus 1. I'm just going to make another arrow. We're just working this equation on down. So this cross multiplication equals that cross multiplication. So that would be 4 times y plus 2. So just to summarize, because I know students stumble on the cross multiplication step, 2 fractions equal to each other gives you another equation where you multiply the top on one side, it's equal to the bottom on the other side times the top on that side. So that's where I got that step from. Let's bring it over, do one more step here. 3 times x minus 1 gives us 3x minus 3. Distribute the 4 on here, which gives us 4y plus 8. Okay? So now I have a nice little equation here that I can use to go to both forms. I can go to slope-intercept form and I can go to general form. And when we look at this, this is really nice for general form. Think about that. Why am I liking this for general form? Okay, if you thought and noticed that there's no fractions on my terms, they're all integers. That's one of the requirements for general form. So this is a good setup to get to general form. The other requirement was that the x value has to be positive, which is nice because the x value already here is positive. So all I need to do is move the other terms around so that and keep the x on this side. So let's see, what am I going to do? I'm going to go ahead and add 3 to both sides. So we're going to do like a plus 3 there and a plus 3 there. And then to get the y term over here, I'm going to subtract 4y on both sides. Just put minus 4y there. And that's going to give me my general form equation. So watch this. I get 3x. This goes away because I'm adding and subtracting. This I bring over, 4y equals, this is gone. And now I have 8 plus 3 gives me 11. So there's my general form equation. Boom, pretty quick. Now let's do a slope-intercept form equation. This is a little bit more complicated, but not much. Your key to remember slope-intercept is that's the line equation solved for y. That's all it is. So I'm going to rewrite this over here, and we'll do that. So this was 3x minus 3 equals 4y plus 8. So we need to solve this one for y. So my first step, I'm just going to subtract 8 from both sides. I'm going to get 3x minus 11 equals 4y. I'm almost there. I just have to divide everything by 4 to get y alone. So we're going to divide by 4. That's going to give me y over here. This is going to be 3/4 x minus 11 over 4. Now let's rewrite that in the proper order. Y equals 3/4 x minus 11 over 4. Don't worry about the fractions. That's fine. You can have improper, weird-looking fractions in your line equation. So that's the steps that you can do with this technique. There's also a nice confirmation here. In our slope-intercept form, slope shows up as 3/4. Cool. We got a slope of 3/4. Look back at the starting point. Our slope was 3/4. So it's got to wind up the same. It's the same line. It's got the same slope. You shouldn't get a different slope. If you did, there's some kind of boo-boo along the way. Okay, now let's pull our line equations from a graph. Okay, so here's a graph. I'm showing you 2 points. And remember, the definition of a line is 2 points define a line. So this line is totally defined by the 2 points I've shown you on the graph, which means we can make equations for it. So let's use our new version of the point slope formula, which I'll first write up here. That was m equals y minus b over x minus a, where m is the slope, b is the y-coordinate of any point on that line, and a is the x-coordinate of any point on that line. So first we need to find our slope. So m, remember from our slope formula, is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So m for this line, I'm going to call this one x2, y2, this one x1, y1. So we're going to do y2, 3 minus y1, which is 2, over x2, which is 4, minus x1, which is 0. So that's my plug-in step for the slope equation. Finish the math out. 3 minus 2 is 1. 4 minus 0 is 4. So our slope is 1/4 for this line. That makes sense. It's a positive slope, so it's got to be going up to the right, and it's not too steep. So a quarter slope is a shallow slope. Okay, so now let's use this equation with either one of these points. Doesn't matter which, you'll get the same line equation. So let's do our plug-in, moving down from here. 1/4 equals y minus, I'm going to go ahead and use this point, it's right in front of me, y minus 3 over x minus 4. So there's my plug-in step using this form of the point slope equation. And now, what do I do next? If you remembered, cross multiply, you're right. So I'm going to do the top times the bottom. This is just 1 times x minus 4. So this is going to leave us with x minus 4 here. And now I do 4 times y minus 3. I'm going to go ahead and distribute right now. So 4 times y is 4y, minus 4 times 3 is 12. So now I have my intermediate form. This lets me go to general form real quick, or slope-intercept, which is the one I'm going to choose. Slope-intercept is typically like one of the most handy forms for a line equation. So we need to solve for y. I'm going to add 12 to both sides. I'm going to get x, negative 4 plus 12 is 8. X plus 8 equals 4y. Now I'm going to divide through by 4. So this becomes x over 4 plus 8 divided by 4 is just 2 equals y. Now let's rewrite that. Y equals, now x over 4 is the same as 1/4 x, and I have my plus 2. There's my slope-intercept form for this line. Okay, here's one for you to try, okay? So I've put my graph here, given you the information you need on the graph to figure out your points. Go ahead and use this format. First find slope, and then plug slope in and one of the points there. So go ahead and give that a try. Okay, now you might have gotten stuck, so let me give you a quick little hint. This point, I just marked 5. So that means it's 5 up on this axis, on the y-axis. So that is the point 0, 5. Okay? X is 0 because we're on the y-axis, but we've come up 5. So that's the point 0, 5 right there. So if that stumped you, go ahead, pause the video again, and then work this problem. Okay, let's see how you did. So our first calculation is to find slope. So that's m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which is going to be, I'm going to call this one the 2 point. So this is going to be 4 minus 5 over 6 minus 0, which is going to give us negative 1 over 6, which is, we can write that as negative 1/6, like that. So now we have our slope. So now we do a plug-in step with this formula. So I get slope over here, minus 1/6 equals y minus sum b. I'm going to go ahead and use this point. So y minus 4 over x minus 6. Okay? So now I have my equation. Now I just need to cross multiply. Now when you do this, you need to decide where the negative is. There's only one. This is negative 1/6, right? But we're going to cross multiply. So we need to put the negative on one of these two numbers so that it does the proper thing across. It's not on both. If it was negative 1 over negative 6, that would be positive 1/6 because you have a division by with two negative numbers. So I'm going to assume the negative is on the 1. So this cross multiplication is going to change the sign on these two. So this will be negative x plus 6. So now I've gotten rid of that negative, so now this one's going to be a positive multiplication. That's going to be equal 6y minus 24. Because I have positive 6 times negative 4. Great. So now let's go ahead and make this into a slope-intercept, gradient-intercept form. So we need to get y alone. I'm going to add 24 to both sides. So now I have minus x, and adding 24 to 6 is going to give me 30. Plus 30 equals 6y. Divide through by 6. So that's going to give me, I have a negative 1. So this becomes negative 1/6 x, because I'm dividing by that 6. 30 divided by 6 is 5. And of course 6y divided by 6 is just y. So now our equation is y equals negative 1/6 x plus 5. And again, let's do our little check. Our slope from up here was negative 1/6. That should show up right here in the slope position in our slope-intercept form for our line equation. Okay, one last one to try. So here's your graph. Notice how this intercept is at 5. I want you to come up with the line equation for this graph, and this time I want you to put it in general form. Not slope-intercept, but general form. So go ahead, pause the video, give this a shot. Okay, if you got hung up, remember this is the x-intercept, so it's crossing the x-axis at 5. When it crosses the x-axis, the y value is 0, so this is the point 5, 0. So if that stopped you, go ahead, pause the video again, and work this problem. Okay, let's take a look. Here's our general form with a point and a slope, y minus b over x minus a. And the first thing we need to do is find our slope, so then we're going to do, actually, let's just go slope equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And we're going to do our plug-in step. I'm going to call this one point 2. So y2 is 0 minus y1, which is 2, over x2, which is 5, minus x1, which is 1. So that's going to give us 0 minus 2 is negative 2. 5 minus 1 is 4. This reduces down to minus 1/2. So there's our slope. So now let's do this plug-in right here, and we get -1/2 equals y minus, now I'm going to use this point as well. So the y coordinate here is 0 over x minus the x coordinate, which is 5. So here we are at that cross multiplication step, and again I'm going to put the negative on the top, on the 1. So you can multiply -1 times x minus 5. That will give us -x plus 5 equals, now the 2 goes on this side. I'm going to multiply the 2 times the y minus 0. So that's going to go away. 2 times 0, just 0. So this is just going to be 2y right there. Okay? Now, we need to put this into general form. And we're not there. We've got a negative on the x, and our constant isn't alone by itself on one side. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add x to both sides and get x plus 2y equals 5. And there's our general form for this line equation. Now that you've watched the video, take a moment to jot down additional notes, some questions for class, or a short summary of the lesson. You can also go back and re-watch the portions of the video that were a little bit challenging for you. If you enjoyed the video, please click like, and if you'd like to help me grow my YouTube channel, please click subscribe.